The first thing Detective Elias Crow noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that felt staged, as if the city itself was holding its breath. The rain had stopped too suddenly, leaving the streets of Black Rose City gleaming like polished mirrors. In one of those reflections, a body lay motionless on the pavement outside the Orion Hotel. Another one? Elias muttered, lighting a cigarette he knew he wouldn't finish. Yes, Officer Hale replied quietly. Same signature. Elias knelt beside the body. Male. Early 40s. No visible wounds. Eyes open, frozen in terror. He died afraid, Elias whispered. That's what he wanted us to see. What do you mean? Hale asked. Elias stood up slowly. This isn't murder. It's a message. 3 victims in 3 weeks. All influential. All found in public places. No signs of struggle. No poison. No fingerprints. No cameras malfunctioned. They had been deliberately disabled. Whoever was doing this wanted to be seen, but never caught. Back at his apartment, Elias poured a drink and stared at the wall where photos of the victims were pinned. He spoke aloud, as if the killer could hear him. You're precise. Intelligent. You plan everything. But why show fear? Why leave them like that? His phone vibrated. Unknown number. You're asking the wrong question. Elias froze. Unknown number. You should be asking who taught you how to think like me. Who is this? Elias typed. The reply came instantly. Unknown number. You don't remember me. But you will. The next day, journalist Mara Vance showed up uninvited at the precinct. You're chasing a ghost, she said, placing a folder on Elias's desk. And he's chasing you. Inside were old case files, Elias's first years as a detective. These were sealed, Elias snapped. Not sealed enough, Mara replied. Every victim was connected to cases you closed. Cases where the wrong person went to prison. Elias felt the room tilt. That's impossible, he said. I followed the evidence. Mara leaned closer. Or the evidence followed you. That night, Elias dreamed of a voice. You ruined my life. He woke up to another message. Unknown number. Tomorrow, someone innocent will die. Unless you remember. The pressure crushed his chest. Elias revisited old interrogation tapes. One face kept appearing. A young man with calm eyes and trembling hands. Name? Elias asked on the tape. Daniel Reed, the man replied. I didn't do it. Elias remembered dismissing him. The evidence had been perfect. Too perfect. Daniel Reed had died in prison 3 years ago. Or so Elias thought. At the abandoned courthouse, Elias followed a final message. Unknown number. Come alone. The lights flickered. Footsteps echoed. Daniel? Elias called. A man stepped from the shadows, older, scarred, alive. You took everything from me, Daniel said calmly. My life. My family. My name. I was wrong, Elias whispered. I see that now. Daniel smiled sadly. No. You see too late. A gun rested in Daniel's hand, but it was pointed at the floor. I didn't kill them, Daniel continued. Fear did. Guilt did. I just reminded them. Sirens wailed outside. Daniel stepped back. Justice isn't about prisons, detective. It's about memory. He disappeared through a hidden door just as officers burst in. Weeks later, the city returned to its noise. The cases were reopened. Names were cleared. Elias stood alone, pinning a new photo on his wall, his own. He spoke softly, to no one. The most dangerous criminal, he said, is the one who believes he was right. Outside, a phone buzzed in someone else's pocket. Unknown number. Now you understand. And somewhere in the city, the silence returned. The silence didn't last. Elias sensed it before it broke, that familiar pressure behind the eyes, the instinct that had saved him too many times to ignore. 3 nights after the courthouse, he was standing at his window when his phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You think the story ended because the city moved on. Elias didn't reply. He poured the drink out instead. Unknown number. Good. You're learning. The next morning, Mara Vance was found unconscious in her apartment. No forced entry. No injuries. Just a single word written on her bathroom mirror in red lipstick. Remember. At the hospital, Elias stood beside her bed, guilt coiling tighter with every breath. "This is my fault," he whispered. Mara opened her eyes slowly. "No," she said hoarsely. "It's your test." She reached under her pillow and handed him a flash drive. "He sent this to me before I collapsed. Said you'd know when to open it." That night, alone, Elias plugged it in. The screen filled with videos, confessions, judges, prosecutors, businessmen, people who had shaped verdicts from behind closed doors. Daniel's voice narrated calmly. They believed the system would protect them. They were wrong. The final video showed a familiar face. Elias Crow. Footage from years ago. An interrogation room. His younger self leaning forward, tired, impatient. "If you just sign," Elias said on the screen, "this all ends." The suspect cried. The video froze. Daniel's voice returned. "You didn't break the law," he said. "You broke people." Elias slammed the laptop shut, breathing hard. "You want me to confess," he said aloud. "You want me exposed." His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. "No. I want you to choose." The next body was discovered at dawn, a retired police captain. The media erupted. Protesters flooded the streets. The city demanded a villain, and Elias felt their eyes turning toward him. Internal Affairs opened an investigation. "You're either being framed," Captain Ruiz said quietly, "or you're hiding something." Elias met his gaze. Both. That night, Elias went where he had sworn never to return, the old interrogation wing, long abandoned. The lights flickered exactly as Daniel liked them. "You came," Daniel said from the shadows. "That means you've decided." "What do you want?" Elias asked. Daniel stepped forward. His voice wasn't angry now. Just tired. "I want the truth to exist," he said. "Not buried. Not justified. Out loud." Elias laughed bitterly. "You think truth fixes this?" "No," Daniel replied. "But lies rot it." Sirens echoed again, closer this time. "They'll arrest me," Elias said. "And you walk away." Daniel shook his head. "No. This ends with balance." He placed a recorder on the table. "One statement," Daniel said. "Everything you did wrong. No excuses. Then I turn myself in. And if I refuse?" Daniel met his eyes. "Then the city keeps bleeding." Elias stared at the recorder. His whole career. His reputation. His identity. He pressed record. "My name is Elias Crow," he said, voice steady but breaking. "And I was wrong more times than I admitted." When he finished, the room felt lighter. Empty. Daniel nodded once. "That's all I needed." Police flooded the building. Daniel raised his hands without resistance. Weeks later, headlines exploded. Careers fell. Cases reopened. Elias resigned. On his last night in the city, he packed his apartment slowly. The wall of photos was gone, except one. A blank space. His phone buzzed one final time. Unknown number. Justice doesn't end. It changes hands. Elias typed back for the first time. "Elias. Then I hope the next hand is steadier." No reply came. Outside, the city was loud again. Alive, chaotic, imperfect. Elias stepped into it, carrying the weight of memory, knowing now that the most dangerous mystery wasn't who committed the crime but who chose to look away. And somewhere, far from the noise, someone else began to remember. Elias thought leaving Black Rose City would bring distance. He was wrong. Distance only sharpened memory. 6 months later, he lived in a coastal town where the fog arrived every evening like a confession no one wanted to hear. He worked nights at a small marina, fixing engines, keeping his head down. No badge. No gun. Just salt on his hands and insomnia in his bones. He had almost convinced himself that Daniel Reed was sitting in a cell somewhere, that the chain had finally closed. Then the murders started again. Different cities. Different victims. Same signature. No wounds. Public places. Terror locked into the eyes. Elias saw the first headline on a flickering television in a bar. "Impossible," he whispered. The bartender glanced at him. "You okay, man?" Elias didn't answer. He was already leaving. 2 days later, an unmarked car stopped outside his rented room. A woman stepped out, sharpsuit, sharper eyes. "Elias Crow," she said. "Federal Bureau. My name is Agent Lorne." "I'm done," Elias replied flatly. "You have the wrong man." "No," she said. "We have the right ghost." Inside her folder were photos of new victims. One detail made Elias's breath catch. Each victim had a note this time. 3 words. He told the truth. "That's not Daniel," Elias said slowly. He wouldn't repeat himself. Agent Lorne watched him carefully. Meaning someone else learned the lesson," Elias replied. "Or someone was watching us the whole time." They flew that night. The investigation led them to a private correctional facility, one Elias recognized instantly. Daniel had been transferred there after his arrest. What if he never stopped teaching? Elias said. Inside the prison, Daniel Reed sat alone, calm as ever. "I didn't do this," Daniel said before anyone asked. Elias stuttered him. "But you're proud." Daniel smiled faintly. "I'm relieved." Agent Lorne leaned forward. "Who's copying you?" Daniel's eyes flicked to Elias. "Not copying. Continuing." Elias felt it then, the cold realization. "You didn't want justice," Elias said quietly. "You wanted succession." Daniel nodded. Movements die when they depend on one man. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He replayed every conversation, every message, every silence. Then he remembered something Daniel had once said. Justice isn't about prisons. It's about memory. Memory could be taught. The next murder happened during a live broadcast. A city councilman collapsed mid-speech. Panic. Screams. Cameras rolling. And on every screen behind him, hacked into the broadcast system, appeared a single sentence. "Confession is contagious." The country erupted. People began coming forward. False confessions mixed with real ones. Old cases drowned the system. Courts froze. Trust collapsed. Agent Lorne confronted Elias in a hotel room. "This is bigger than Reed," she said. "This is ideology." Elias stared at the wall. "No. It's recruitment." They traced encrypted messages to an online archive. Videos, manuals, psychological breakdowns. Authored anonymously. Except for one file. A draft. Unpublished. Metadata timestamped months ago. Author. E. Crow. Elias felt sick. "I never sent that," he said. "But you wrote it," Lorne replied. "Your confession. Your reasoning. Your language." Daniel had weaponized Elias's honesty. That night, Elias recorded a new message. No filters. No encryption. Just truth. "If you're listening," he said into the camera, "you think you're fixing something broken. You're not. You're becoming what you hate." The video went live. Reactions were immediate. Divided. Violent. Some called him brave. Others called him a traitor. And then a final message appeared on his phone. Unknown number. "You finally understand the cost." Elias replied. "Elias." Then come end it. A location followed. An abandoned broadcasting tower at the edge of the city. As Elias climbed the stairs, he realized the most terrifying truth of all. Daniel Reed was no longer the villain. He was the proof. And the person waiting at the top had learned everything Elias ever taught. The door opened. Elias stopped. Because standing there was someone he knew. Someone he trusted. Someone who had been there from the beginning. And suddenly, the past made perfect, horrifying sense. The person standing at the top of the tower smiled before Elias could speak. "Mara," he whispered. Mara Vance stepped aside to let him in, her expression calm, almost gentle, as if this were a long-planned reunion instead of a revelation that split his chest open. "You always needed a witness," she said. "I just decided to stop pretending I was neutral." Elias laughed softly, a broken sound. "You were unconscious. The hospital. The mirror. Staged," Mara replied. "Daniel taught me how performance shapes belief. You of all people should understand that." The broadcasting room hummed with power. Screens glowed. Timers counted down. Below them, the city stretched out, unaware, breathing. "You used me," Elias said. "My words. My confession. I amplified you, Mara corrected. Truth doesn't spread on its own. It needs a carrier. A story people can attach themselves to. Elias stepped closer. How long? Mara tilted her head, thinking. Before Daniel. Before you reopened the first case. I was covering injustice long before you were ready to admit it existed. So this is justice? Elias gestured to the screens. Fear. Chaos. This is pressure, she said calmly. Systems change only when they crack. Elias felt it then. Not anger, but grief. People are dying. Yes, Mara replied. And thousands are waking up. A screen flickered to life. A live feed. A countdown. 2:14. What happens at 0? Elias asked. Mara met his eyes. Your voice again. One last time. A call. Not to confess, to ignite. Elias shook his head. You've turned truth into a weapon. No, she said softly. I turned it into a mirror. Outside, sirens began to rise, distant but growing. You know how this ends, Elias said. They'll stop the broadcast. They'll arrest you. Mara smiled sadly. They already tried. She handed him a small remote. You can shut it down, she said. Or you can speak. Either way, the world will change. Elias stared at the remote, then at the camera lens waiting patiently for him. A memory surfaced, the interrogation room, years ago, the moment he chose speed over certainty. I won't be your symbol, he said. Mara's eyes softened. Then be your own. The countdown reached 0:30. Elias stepped in front of the camera, but instead of turning it on, he smashed it against the console. Sparks flew. Screens went dark one by one. Mara inhaled sharply. You're choosing silence. No, Elias said. I'm choosing responsibility. The doors burst open. Armed agents flooded the room. Mara didn't resist. She only looked at Elias as she was taken away. You think you stopped it, she said quietly. But ideas don't need towers. Later, as dawn broke, Elias sat alone on the steps of the tower. The city below buzzed, shaken, divided, alive. His phone buzzed one last time. Unknown number. You chose neither side. Elias typed back slowly. Elias, I chose the people who live with the consequences. No reply came. But across the country, somewhere unseen, someone closed a laptop, erased a draft, and whispered, Not yet. And Elias finally understood the true shape of the mystery. There was never one mastermind. There was a vacuum. And the question wasn't who would fill it, but who would refuse to. The fog rolled in again. And the story kept breathing. Morning came quietly, as if the city itself was ashamed of how loudly it had screamed the night before. News drones hovered, analysts argued, politicians promised reforms they would later forget. Maravance was charged. Daniel Reed was moved to a black site facility and disappeared from the public record. The broadcasts stopped. Officially, the crisis ended. Unofficially, nothing was the same. Elias Crow refused interviews. He declined offers to write books, to testify, to become a symbol. He understood now that symbols were dangerous. They invited worship, and worship invited blindness. He stayed. Not as a detective. Not as a hero. As a witness. Months passed. Trials unfolded. Some convictions were overturned. Some never were. Justice limped forward, uneven and imperfect, but no longer invisible. One evening, Elias returned to the old marina. The fog was thick, wrapping the docks in silence. He sat at the edge, boots dangling above dark water, listening to the quiet he had once feared. He spoke softly, not to anyone in particular. I thought the truth was enough, he said. I was wrong. Truth without humility becomes cruelty. The wind carried his words away. A child laughed somewhere in the distance. A boat engine started. Life continued, stubbornly, beautifully. Elias reached into his pocket and pulled out his old badge. He turned it over once, then let it fall into the water. It sank without ceremony. Not many, but enough.